While Ian's setting up, perhaps a bit of background. So I'm a bit unusual in that my career has always been in fundraising. So I left Brisbane in 1982 to become the Secretary for Education and Promotion of ABM, the mission agency. Discovered immediately that it wasn't education and promotion they needed, they were just hopeless at fundraising. So literally got out the yellow pages, looked up under F for fundraising and found the Fundraising Institute, and there started the next 38 years or whatever it's been since then in fundraising. I did that for a couple of years, then spent nearly a decade running parish plain giving programs, stewardship programs. So for nearly a decade ran parish programs in Anglican, Catholic, Uniting Church parishes around the country, and then moved to university fundraising and started and ran fundraising at Central Queensland University in Rockhampton, RMIT in Melbourne, and then I took over what was already a very good operation here at QUT, and then in 2004 began the consultancy that's now called Ask Right. We work in all kinds of organisations, schools, art galleries, hospitals, etc. But we do also do work with churches more in New Zealand than in here. So we work in both countries, but with lots of great projects. We're helping build a Catholic church and school out near Oxley at the moment. We are repairing one and building a new cathedral in New Zealand, probably the only one on the planet this century. I mean, there are not going to be too many new cathedrals built from nothing. As Everett was saying that publicity doesn't raise money, and I've said that to clients a few times, but the trouble with fundraising is there's always something that turns it on its head. We had a pro bono client, good people who were trying to raise money for a children's hospice in Queensland, and they were keen to get publicity, and we said, publicity doesn't raise your money. So anyway, they got an article in the Good Weekend for which someone read it and sent them $3 million. So publicity doesn't raise your money, except sometimes it does. So I'm sure these notes will be accessible to you afterwards. There we go. So parish fundraising, and some of you have interests other than parishes. We've heard of St Francis College. Are there any other institutions that you've got in mind for fundraising other than a parish today?
Yeah, I'm from the Girl Guides.
Girl Guides, excellent, yep.
Place to belong.
Tell me about that. What kind of place is that?
Mental health network.
Okay, mental health network. Anything, anywhere else, yes? Welfare services? Okay.
Well, I'm a parish councillor in St Peter's at Bribie Island. My wife and I are also very involved in Rotary, doing a lot of fundraising for humanitarian work in Rotary.
Okay, humanitarian work through Rotary. And any other organisations? Okay, so I'll make some my remarks are directed to parishes, but I'll try and flesh those out for the other kinds of organisations that are here, and some of these principles will apply. I mean, the bedrock of parish fundraising is the effective offertory program. Whether they call it stewardship, plain giving, it's gone by lots of names over the years, but there's the essential week-by-week giving. And talk more about that in a moment, but yeah. And these cover, as Everett alluded to, both the parish needs, the needs for people to respond in community, and the personal need to give, which is a distinctive element of religious fundraising that doesn't appear in fundraising for other purposes. So if you're not doing that well enough, that's where you start. We should be doing that well. And you want to move as much of it to online responses to envelopes were great, but you will raise more money if people move to direct giving so that you still get it whether they're in attendance or not. I wrote my master's thesis on the history of Australian church fundraising, and the development of those programs featured largely in that, so we can go into that in a lot of detail if need be. I only have one claim to fame in fundraising and church circles, and that is I define the word stewardship for the Oxford Dictionary of the Christian Church. So that's my singular publishing, almost single claim to fame. The other thing is, from time to time you'll have capital needs. You've got to build a new school, a new parish hall, renovate your church, etc. And these are the kind of capital programs that Everil mentioned. They're a different kind of fundraising and a different approach. We have raised the funds to rebuild 12 churches in New Zealand after the Canterbury earthquakes. Small, little, ordinary churches scattered throughout rural Canterbury, and somehow they've all found $1 million and more that they didn't think they had in order to rebuild their churches. The number of Anglican clergy that have said to me, I've just buried another person who left all their money to the Salvation Army. And I said, well, did you ask them to make a gift in their will to your church? Oh, no. So, well, that's what you get. The Salvos obviously did. Bequest promotion, seeking gifts in wills should absolutely be thoroughgoing for every church. And the only reason you don't have lots of money now is that parishes have neglected this for the last 40 years. So don't let it continue. And it's really easy.
So you need personal connections, do you? When the approach needs to be, personal. It can't be publicity. You need to know.
You need to give people the respect of sitting down and speaking with them appropriately. And but before you leave, you'll have done that. And of course, there are appeals for things in the diocese and the national church that you might want to support through your parish and to promote. That's part of parish life. And finally, there are some other things that emerge from time to time in your local or international community, special needs that happen and that you might want to promote. I guess in my view, they're the 5 kinds of things that you should be concerned about in fundraising. Every kind of fundraising has these elements. You have a need or an opportunity that needs to be fulfilled, and you've got a vision for how life will be when that's done. Let's talk about need for a minute. Who has a need? When we talk about fundraising, who's got a need? What's yours?
A new roof on the hall and maintain the church building.
Okay, so you need a roof on a hall. Let me tell you that's not a need. Okay, that's a solution. Putting a new roof on is a solution. So if it's a solution, what is a solution to?
Solution to the maintenance of the building. Otherwise, you're going to have.
Why do you bother with the building? What is the purpose of the building?
To assist with the ministry of the parish.
Okay, so what is the ministry of the parish doing for people?
Providing community service.
What's the community? How does the community service help people?
Well, it identifies with the church and with the community-sponsored events.
How are people better off because you do that stuff in the hall? How are lives improved?
Well, they have a place to identify and call part of their lives. It gives them some sort of basis for their activities.
What is it about their life that those activities that you run will help? No, sure. Don't let him off the hook.
What is it about their life?
Yeah, so you're going to run some services to help people, but what is it about their lives that...
Well, it puts some meaning into their part of their daily activity or their weekly activity, and it's going to help them identify who with and what cause or purpose.
What is it about their lives that is deficient that they need more meaning and purpose?
Well, they may be isolated or lonely or looking for associations and social contact.
Do you get the point? Now we've got a need. You've got people feeling isolated, etc. All the great words you had. And you've got a solution for that. You've got a series of programs that you want to run, but you can't run them as you want to because you haven't got a nice, safe, dry place for people to, warm, place for people to meet. So the need of the roof is kind of, in some ways, start with human needs. Start it as basic human need as you can, because that's what people care about. And you've got a problem in providing the solution that you want to provide, and that's what people should help you fund. And why will they help you fund? Not because they love roofs, but because they love the people and are concerned about them feeling isolated, etc. Okay. Do that tough exercise next time you're talking fundraising. The only exception that I've got opportunity, there really only is one opportunity, and that is astronomy. Astronomy is completely useless. Right? None of our lives get better because we spend these millions and millions of dollars finding farther and farther galaxies. But it's really easy to raise money for. So, Errol did a good job of talking about giving yourself. Little kids in Australia play lots of different games, and a really popular game is On the Bank and In the River. Do you have children or grandchildren who've ever played this? They draw a line with a stick, or they put down a hose or a rope. They all get in a line, they call On the Bank. You stay in the river, you jump to this side, On the Bank. And of course you call the wrong one and, people jump, all right, you're out. And so it goes on. This is an On the Bank, In the River exercise. You can't raise money if you are not giving, because once you are giving yourself, it changes to a come and join me message. This is really important for groups like school boards who think they run a fundraising program for the school. Of course, we're not giving, but we're going to ask everybody else to give. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It starts in the centre with the most committed people. And we work a lot with schools, and if you've got a school board that give, then they're keen to run proper fundraising. School board that doesn't give, they don't actually want the fundraising to succeed. And we're just debating whether we won't put as a standing condition of our contracts that if the board is not, every member of the board is not giving within 6 months of us starting, we're out. We put that to a school in New Zealand 2 weeks ago as something we would make a condition of our involvement with them. Next thing is to identify others who care. So you need to raise money for a need that we've identified. You need to most easily find people who care about that need. The harder way is to go and find someone with lots of money and to convince them to care. That's the hard road. Much better to find somebody who already cares and ask them to help support it. So how do you do that? You find someone who has expressed their care in other ways, who gives to a similar organisation or to a similar issue. Put a closing down notice up outside the church or the hall, a for sale sign outside St Luke's Hall. That'll find out who cares. Yeah. And ask effectively. There are ways of asking that are respectful, truthful, ethical, and effective. And there are ways to mess it up. So you might as well learn how to do it right, and we'll do a little bit of that. We'll do some practice on that in a minute. And then very importantly, you've got to thank people. Thank people well, not over the top. I think I contributed a couple of $100 to the University of Sydney, and I think so far I've had about 7 or 8 letters and phone calls and all the rest of the carry on. Probably far spent more than my money on thanking me. It's not over the top, but appropriate and sincere. And what everybody wants to know now is, what impact did it have? The money I gave you last time, I hear you thanking me, but did it do what you set out for me, what you said it would do? So reporting impact is the current theme of lots of fundraising, because when you ask me again, it's the fact that I know what impact my last gift had that makes me give again. But what is different about religious fundraising is that we think it's good for people to give. In the old days of early stewardship programs, we used to call it the need of the giver to give. We think it's good that people give. This is why parishes that don't need the money run stewardship programs. For well, they want to support programs in the church further away, but they know it's very good for people to be giving what they can. And just on a little aside about church giving is not small. It is not less than the other sectors. More money is given to religion than any other sector in almost all the Western countries that measure these things. And in Australia, that's extraordinary when you think this is the only Western country where it's not tax deductible. And this is the fault of the churches who just won't have that conversation with the government. All right, so there are some myths that hold us all back in church fundraising. All of you will know Norman Lindsay's The Magic Pudding. Does anybody not know the story of the Magic Pudding? All right, it's an early Australian poem, well illustrated. What was the name of the koala? Blinky. That's that word. Did Blinky Bill come out of Magic Pudding? No, I think it's a separate story. But featured in the Magic Pudding was steak and kidney pudding, I think. The more you ate, the bigger it got. That is philanthropy. The more people give, the more they enjoy it, feel good about giving it, the more they give. Seriously, philanthropy is the magic pudding. We'll come back to that, how that works in a moment. One of the things we sometimes find, not so much in churches, but in some church-related organisations, is this myth that, we won't ask for money in a very effective way because other organisations deserve it more than we do. So, especially if you're in a community and there's a medical group fundraising and an aged care fundraising, so we won't go out for our new hall because there are lots of these other things. Philanthropy is not limited. Australians give between 1% and 2% of their income or their assets away each year. Between 1% and 2%. There are very few giving more than 2%. So, and you've only got to look at the fact an issue pops up, Israel Folau needs some money for his lawyers, there's a cyclone somewhere else, millions of dollars are given within days. Is that a question or an arm stretch?
Is that net income or is that, you say 1% of income? Is that gross or net income?
Well, the tax stats just go against total income. Yeah. Yeah. And it's pretty much the same, US, Canada, Australia, not significant. There are points of a percentage difference, but not overwhelmingly. You're refraining from asking people for giving doesn't help the other organisations much. The quote sometimes attributed to J.F. Kennedy that rising tide lifts all boats is absolutely true for philanthropy. If you're in a generous community, everybody benefits. You teach someone to give, they give to other causes. You hear that someone's giving to another cause in your town, you should think, hurrah, that's great for philanthropy in my town, that's great for us. It's not a negative for you that someone just gave a lot of money to somewhere else. It's generosity that needs to grow. The people can't afford to give. I mentioned there that the level of giving currently and the response people can make when the appeal is interesting enough. Another is that fundraising shouldn't cost anything. Perhaps best illustrated by the fact when I was early in fundraising, there were in Australia two organisations the same size, Plan International and World Vision. They're about the same size, both doing effective international aid work. One is now about 40 times the size of the other. Plan International had a rule that they never spent more than 10% of their income on fundraising. World Vision at the time had disgracefully high fundraising expenditure. But in the long term, there is so much more activity being done by one than the other. Fundraising costs money, which should be costing you somewhere between 10 and 20% of what you raise. So you think about fundraising, there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. You can be really efficient and have it cost you nothing, but not raise very much. Or you can be less efficient and more effective. Spend some money, raise a lot more money. And that we need to treat everyone the same in fundraising. Some people have got more money and that's what you need to raise. You need to spend some more time with them. You might need to invest in some additional things that raise the money. It doesn't mean that they are any worthier people or that they are better people in any scheme of things. They've got that particular asset. Of course, in the church, it's only one of the things we want. We just ran the first appeal for the Catholic Archdiocese of Wellington, and it was appeal, we called it for the combined ministries of the Archdiocese, and we asked people to give, to pray and to volunteer for the church's agencies. Well, that was my plan until the Cardinal said, Daniel, I think that should be, we want them to pray and to give and volunteer. I said, Cardinal, I'm not going to do it unless it's a directive. I think it should be give, pray, volunteer. Cardinal John Dew is a very, very gentle man, widely respected by everyone, and no one in the room had ever seen this before. He looked at me and said, Daniel, it's a directive. So that's what happened.